They're the videos that shock the nation.
We need limbs, but no hands and feet need to be attached.
Who does this? What civilized culture does this?
Would you call that intact?
These are intact kidneys, yes.
Are they selling body parts?
This has become selling while pretending not to sell.
Or worse?
Are you accusing some of these doctors of murder?
And will it change the debate about abortion in this country?
So I've been screaming about this for, 30 years now.
Will supporters fight back?
I will continue to fight for and uphold a woman's right to choose, including defending Planned Parenthood.
Fox News reporting. Planned Parenthood, the hidden harvest. From Washington, D.C., Shannon Bream.
They call themselves investigative journalists, but the tactics they employ would probably get them fired in most newsrooms. Still, as guerrilla fighters in the cultural war, David Daleiden and the people who worked at his Center for Medical Progress have made the front pages. And the videos they've released, shedding light on the hidden side of a market in fetal parts, have got everyone talking. Before we continue, a warning. Some viewers may find the material in this program disturbing.
Very good at getting parts on liver because we know that, so I'm not going to crush that part. I'm going to basically crush below, I'm going to crush above, and I'm going to see if I can get it intact.
This is Dr. Deborah Nucatola, Planned Parenthood's Senior Director of Medical Services, discussing how her organization helps ensure aborted fetuses can be properly harvested for medical research.
The $30 to $100 price, that's per specimen that we're talking about, right? Yeah.
Yes.
On July 14th, the video seemed to come out of nowhere to shock America. But it was the culmination of years of work for 26-year-old David Daleiden. Daleiden had been a pro-life activist in high school. The message beneath his high school senior picture, vote pro-life. It's what God wants you to do. In college, he joined Live Action, a pro-life group headed by another millennial activist, Lila Rose. Let's talk about Live Action, really the precursor to a lot of what we're seeing today.
So starting investigative work at Live Action was really because I saw just this complete lack of discussion about what was really happening at Planned Parenthood and in the abortion industry. The only thing that you would hear is something positive about how Planned Parenthood is helpful to women.
I was the director of research for Live Action from about 2008 to 2013. So in that capacity, I helped construct most of the undercover projects that they did. I'm definitely really proud of the work that we did together.
3 years ago, Rose and Daleiden collaborated on a sting that sounds awfully familiar. A woman posing as a donor to Planned Parenthood began asking questions about federal funding for abortions. Questions so suspicious that Planned Parenthood set up a surveillance camera to catch her next visit. The tape ended up in the hands of California Attorney General Kamala Harris. No charges were filed, but the sting was exposed. For Daleiden, it was a valuable learning experience.
I think we developed a lot of really novel and kind of pioneering investigative journalism approaches, especially with this issue in particular.
Daleiden and Rose parted ways not long after the failed sting. Daleiden had a new idea, a covert operation looking into the buying and selling of fetal tissue. One of the people he called was Troy Newman, the controversial leader of anti-abortion group Operation Rescue.
Save these babies from certain death.
It was a very interesting, elaborate sting operation. Did you counsel him on that?
I can't walk into a Planned Parenthood. I've been in the pro-life movement for over 25 years. They will surely recognize me. But here's this young, very bright, very courageous, very faithful young man mapping out this idea. And so we hit it off very, very well, and we began discussing all the various techniques that he would have to use in order to infiltrate Planned Parenthood.
Did you all at that point start having planning sessions or discussions about how he would carry out something that had to be a disciplined, very long-term operation?
What we wanted to do was to catch them off script. What do abortionists say when they're just having lunch over salad and a glass of wine? That was the idea. So alternate identities had to be set up, alternate companies had to be set up.
So Daleiden founded the Center for Medical Progress, or CMP.
It is one of these vague sounding names, but could mean many things.
CMP was started as a 501c3 charitable trust, but Daleiden also founded a dummy for-profit company called Biomax Procurement Services. He enlisted people to represent Biomax. These are people, whoever you have posing as the buyers, who clearly have in-depth medical understanding and education, it seems like.
Center for Medical Progress chose very intelligent, creative, adaptable people to do this work. And there was a lot of really intensive training and preparation that went into preparing them to actually go undercover.
You've got to be able to talk like them. You have to know the information sometimes better than they do. They had to be very well versed in medical technology, medical terminology, the medical procedures, anatomy, and so forth.
How did you all come up with the 21st century technology to walk into these places, to be able to record these conversations in a way that you felt was reliable?
It's as simple as a Google search and a credit card. The equipment that we were talking about was high quality law enforcement type equipment. It's not going to fail at the critical moment.
With everything in place, the infiltration proceeded more smoothly than expected.
It was definitely surprising to myself and to some of the other investigators on the team that when our investigators basically said two things to Planned Parenthood representatives. Number one, we love abortion, we think what you do is great, thank you. And number two, we want to harvest your baby parts and sell them and pay you money in exchange for that. Those two statements were like the magic words that got us in the door. And Planned Parenthood was happy to welcome one more biotech company to the table to harvest and sell baby parts.
Yeah, well, I'm glad we're finally able to connect. I know it's been difficult.
Yes.
Yeah.
Before too long, Daleiden found himself in a big meeting at a posh LA bistro with Dr. Nucatola, who we saw earlier.
They want to break even. And if they can do a little better than break even and do so in a way that, seems reasonable, they're happy to do it.
Overall, Daleiden says his group shot about 300 hours of video. The entire project had taken 2.5 years, but Daleiden was finally ready on July 14th to make public his undercover work.
There are no guidelines.
Not written.
Yeah, there are guidelines on research, but there are not guidelines on tissue procurement.
Okay.
And there will never be guidelines.
Dr. Nucatola also said that when possible, she would help facilitate the procurement of specific fetal tissue during the actual abortion procedure.
I'll actually collect what she wants sometimes.
Oh, you actually do the...
If I see it.
You do the collection, yeah.
Why not? It's
Yeah,
right there.
yeah.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, I don't know, it makes the procedure that much better. Like, I've just done something even better. If you maintain enough of the dialogue to the person that's actually doing the procedures and they understand what the end game is.
The video caused a firestorm. We should note that we tried repeatedly to get Planned Parenthood to respond on camera to the controversy. The organization and several of its surrogates declined our invitation. However, the first video did prompt an immediate public response from the president of Planned Parenthood, Cecile Richards.
I want to be really clear. The allegation that Planned Parenthood profits in any way from tissue donation is not true. Our donation programs, like any other high-quality healthcare providers, follows all laws and ethical guidelines.
But it was only the first video. Daleiden and the Center for Medical Progress were just getting warmed up.
So in the second video that we released, that's a lunch meeting with Dr. Mary Gatter, who for a long time was the medical director of Planned Parenthood Los Angeles.
Figure out what others are getting, and if this is in the ballpark, and that's fine. If it's still low, then we can talk about it. I want to lend with you more.
Dr. Gatter was actually haggling over the compensation price that a middleman biotech company should be paying to her Planned Parenthood affiliate in exchange for intact fetal specimens.
Using a less crunchy technique to get more whole specimens.
I want to go back to your most basic statement is that they are selling body parts. Again, they say there's no direct evidence of that there are repeated times during these videos that we've seen so far that the doctors talk about this not being about revenue, this not being about selling, that they make that clear, and that there's nothing so far that you have released that proves that they've broken any federal laws.
At the end of the day, money goes in to Planned Parenthood and baby parts come out. If you look at what they're actually doing and how their business is actually structured, it becomes clear that they're profiting off of the sale of the body parts of the babies that they abort.
Planned Parenthood was now on the defensive, but the next video Daleiden released was to many the most shocking yet.
Kidney and adrenal.
David Daleiden had put out 2 videos that got everyone talking, but the third, released July 28th, still came across as a bombshell.
The third video, our investigators are shown in the abortion clinic's Path Lab with Dr. Savita Ginda, who's the Vice President and Medical Director for Planned Parenthood of the Rocky Mountains.
Dr. Ginda and Daleiden's undercover buyer discuss intact specimens. In other words, an aborted fetus with all its parts.
Intact is probably less than 10%. Less than 10%. Sometimes, you know, if someone delivers before we are able to see them for procedure, then we are intact. But you'll never know. That's not what we go for. Yeah, we try for that to happen.
Also in that video, Daleiden introduces 24-year-old Holly O'Donnell as a former employee of STEM Express, a company that buys fetal tissue from Planned Parenthood.
I thought I was going to be just drawing blood, not procuring tissue from aborted fetuses.
She describes her shock at what she says she saw there.
The moment I took the tweezers, I put them in the dish. I remember grabbing a leg, and I said, "This is a leg," and the moment I picked it up, I could just feel like death and pain. Like, I've never felt that before, like shoot up through my body, and I blacked out.
When Daleiden created his front company, Biomax Procurement Services, it was in the mold of STEM Express. The video captures Biomax operatives at a Planned Parenthood lab hoping to duplicate the experience of STEM Express representatives.
That's the heart.
I think so, right?
Yeah.
Here's the heart.
Everyone's trying to get in on it.
My fingers will smush it if I try to.
You're trying to pick it up.
The heart is right there.
The heart over there.
So would you call that intact?
These are intact kidneys,
Okay.
yes. If somebody needed...
Because if I looked at that, I'd be like, that's good to go.
Oh, yeah.
That's like 21.
Yeah.
5 stars.
In the next video, we see a woman identified as Melissa Farrell, Director of Research for Planned Parenthood Gulf Coast in Houston, discussing whether abortions can be performed to harvest certain parts of the fetus.
Yeah, and so if we alter our process and we are able to obtain intact fetal cadavers, then we can make it part of the budget that any dissections are this, and splitting the specimens into different shipments is this. I mean, it's all just a matter of line items.
Do you think that that is going to be one of the toughest things for Planned Parenthood and for those involved to explain? Because we know under federal law, you can't change the timing or procedure of an abortion for the specific purpose of harvesting these parts.
Yeah, I think it's frankly impossible for them to explain. And if you look at the statements from Planned Parenthood, they still have yet to address at all the claim in the very first video that their senior director of medical services was using partial birth abortions in order to get higher quality body parts from the babies that she was aborting.
My understanding is that for those specimens to be sellable, to use for research, you can't have used certain drugs in utero to have caused the death of the child, to end that life. How does that work then if you end up with a fully intact fetal cadaver that is then available for sale and research?
That's exactly the question that law enforcement across the country need to be asking of Planned Parenthood leadership.
Some of the scenarios that we're talking about here would involve a child that is alive at some point during the delivery, makes it out of the womb, out of the canal, still living, and at some point is killed either during the harvesting of organs or dies in the pathology lab. Are you accusing some of these doctors of murder?
Absolutely. And it's not just my accusation or allegation, it's their own words. In the third video that we released, Dr. Ginda is very clear that occasionally they'll have a later second trimester patient who, quote, delivers before the clinic gets to see the patient. Melissa Farrell admitted that sometimes their doctors have been able to get completely intact specimens, and that's something that they could do for tissue procurement.
A powerful accusation, and Planned Parenthood supporters didn't wait long to make some accusations of their own. More on that later. But when we return, we look at how Planned Parenthood got to be the organization at the center of so much controversy. Parenthood's roots go back to 1916 with the social activism of its founder and first president, Margaret Sanger.
Margaret Sanger was an early to mid 20th century figure who championed birth control, contraception.
Professor Robert George teaches constitutional law, legal and political philosophy, and bioethics at Princeton University.
She wanted to make birth control more widely available so that there would be fewer, quote, unwanted, quote, children.
Sanger is a controversial figure today because of her apparent support for birth control as a way to limit the number of what she saw as inferior people.
She cared about who was having the children. She thought that there were some people who should be having children or several children, but other people who shouldn't be having children.
Many opponents claimed she was a racist, whose ideas were at the base of Planned Parenthood, while supporters reply she was fighting for the empowerment of women, and her backing of what were widespread ideas at the time is overstated. Wherever she stood, preventing certain children from being born was on her mind to the last, as this 1957 interview with Mike Wallace suggests.
And do you believe there is such a thing as sin?
Well, I think the greatest sin in the world is bringing children into the world that have disease from their parents, that have no chance in the world to be a human being, practically. Delinquents, prisoners, all sorts of things just marked when they're born. That, to me, is the greatest sin.
In the early years of Planned Parenthood, the planning was about birth control.
As late as the early 1960s, Planned Parenthood itself was sharply and very publicly distinguishing abortion from contraception on the precise ground that abortion takes a new human life, whereas contraception simply prevents a life from coming into existence.
Throughout the 60s and early 70s, there was a nationwide debate on abortion. Some states liberalized their laws, while a pro-life movement sprang up to fight for the rights of unborn children. Then, in 1973, everything changed when the Supreme Court handed down Roe v. Wade, which in essence created a right to have an abortion.
We had a case here of a decision, yes, that was being carried along by cultural currents, but which at the same time, and with just as much force, shaped those cultural currents. Because once you introduce the idea that the government can authorize the destruction of human life, you've introduced a different form of government.
Father Frank Pavone, author of Abolishing Abortion, has been a pro-life leader for decades.
You have a different kind of government which no longer protects all human life, but which rather becomes the arbiter of human life. Very profound. That introduces very profound changes in the way we look at government.
Planned Parenthood became a leading provider of abortion, performing an estimated 6.8 million since 1970. Another important development came in 1970 when Planned Parenthood affiliates started receiving federal funds through family planning subsidies to low-income people. Since then, the amount the federal government gives to Planned Parenthood has risen to over $500 million a year, according to their 2013-2014 annual report. However, the Hyde Amendment, first passed by Congress in 1976, forbids the use of certain federal funds for most cases of abortion, so the money officially goes to other Planned Parenthood expenses.
We know that Planned Parenthood can take money that is from private sources, use it for abortions, and replace that money with money from the federal government that's used for other Planned Parenthood purposes. So the fungibility of money tends to undercut the effect of the Hyde Amendment. Abortion was treated as a constitutional right by the Supreme Court of the United States, precisely on the ground that it was a purely private act. But now we're told that even though this is a private service, not a public good, we should be forced to pay for it, even if we have the most profound moral objections against killing innocent human beings, much less dismembering them and selling their body parts.
Meanwhile, a new question arose: what to do with discarded fetuses? Some saw medical potential, while others felt experimenting with a being that had a full complement of human DNA was wrong. In 1993, Bill Clinton and a Democratic Congress passed a law that gave the National Institutes of Health direct authority to fund human embryo research. Then, in 1995, a newly elected Republican Congress passed the Dickey-Wicker Amendment, which prevented federal funds for research where human embryos are created or destroyed.
I co-authored an amendment to the Labor HHS Appropriations Act, prohibiting the use of taxpayer funds to create human embryos for research, or support any research in which human embryos are harmed, destroyed, or subjected to risks not permitted for unborn children.
I think the reality is the law was written to try and achieve a certain purpose, to make sure that there wasn't some kind of financial incentive or some kind of rationale based on how fetal tissue might be used for research purposes that would create an inducement to have an abortion in the first place or conduct the abortion in a certain way, specifically because you wanted to harvest the tissue, if you will, for research purposes.
Dr. Scott Gottlieb was a Bush administration official in the Food and Drug Administration.
Policymakers wanted to make sure that there was a clear separation between a woman's decision to have an abortion and the ultimate use of the tissue for some kind of research purpose, so that the use of the tissue itself couldn't become some kind of rationale, if you will.
One thing is certain, abortion isn't the end of the story, it's just the beginning. A small industry has grown up around the harvesting of fetuses. We'll look into that when we return. So far, we've seen how David Daleiden set out on the controversial task of exposing the inner workings of Planned Parenthood. He's released a number of explosive videos, with more promised. No matter what side you come down on, he's demonstrated at least one thing. An abortion may be the end of a potential life, but it can also be the beginning of a journey for the fetal tissue involved. There are approximately 1 million abortions a year performed in the United States. Each one has its own story, but taken as a whole, that is a lot of fetal tissue. And in an age when many see promise in research utilizing such tissue, and during a time when there are gray areas in the laws governing what can be done with the tissue, it's not surprising that an industry has sprouted up, built around buying and selling the aftermath of abortions. In particular, we're seeing biotech startups who procure the material from places like Planned Parenthood and get it out to end users such as universities and researchers around the world.
Research universities, in some cases pharmaceutical companies, they don't want to be in the business of going into those sites and procuring the tissue for themselves.
Dr. Scott Gottlieb, the former FDA official who worked on tissue-related regulation, explains the rise of these middlemen.
So they're happy to pay a markup, and in some cases a substantial markup, so that this can be a truly arm's-length transaction. They can be as far removed as possible from the actual procurement of the tissue.
One such company in this up-and-coming market is STEM Express, tucked into an office park in Placerville, California, about an hour and a half east of Sacramento.
I feel like STEM Express does something very unique for medical research that most of these institutions, whether or not it's a small academic to a big pharmaceutical, is not set up to produce those types of cells and specimens.
36-year-old CEO Kate Dyer, who graduated with a sociology degree from Sacramento State, started STEM Express in 2010 with just $9,000. Billing itself as the largest provider of maternal blood and fetal tissue globally, it's grown by leaps and bounds, taking in $2.2 million in revenue in 2013. It's also gotten great press. Inc. magazine listed STEM Express among the top 50 fastest-growing women-led private companies in America. And Dyer was featured in the Comstock's article, Cracking the Glass. She was also listed as one of 14, quote, women who mean business in the Sacramento Business Journal. Any doubt that this is a business is dispelled at the STEM Express website, where the company's product lines and pricing are displayed. Fetal tissue is only a portion of what they sell, but you can pick up items such as fetal liver stem progenitor cells for up to $24,000. That's right, $24,000 for this top-of-the-line product. STEM Express also markets cells for the development of humanized mice.
There's still a lot of early experimentation, work being done in laboratory and work being done in animal models to see if you can take the tissue itself and try to make it differentiate into different kinds of tissue and different kinds of cells. There's also work being done to look at how the tissue would react to certain kinds of drugs.
David Daleiden targeted STEM Express early on in his investigation. On May 22nd, he arranged a lunch meeting with CEO Kate Dyer.
So what would keep your lab happy? Like what would make your lab happy?
Another 50 livers a week.
In this video, attracted by Dyer's success, Daleiden's tissue buyers actually wanted to partner up with STEM Express.
Realistically, if we were to do an agreement with you guys.
Dyer touts her close relationship with Planned Parenthood.
I mean, Planned Parenthood has volume.
Right.
You know, because they're a volume institution.
And she discusses the qualms felt by some of the researchers who receive the tissue her company provides, such as when they send a fetal skull.
Tell the lab it's coming. So don't open the box. Oh, God. You know what I mean? It's almost like they don't want to know where it comes from. Megan's seen that, where they're like, we need limbs, but no hands and feet need to be attached.
In a video released September 1st, Daleiden talks with Perrin Larton, who works for one of Dyer's competitors, a nonprofit called Advanced Bioscience Resources.
Right.
The whole point is not to have a live birth.
Okay.
And so the doctors have all, unless it's somebody who has had 6 pregnancies and 6 vaginal deliveries.
And then it just kind of pops out.
I literally have had women come in and they'll go in the OR and they're back out in 3 minutes. And I'm going, what's going on? Oh yeah, the fetus was already in the vaginal canal whenever we put her on stirrups. It just fell out.
But Larton laments the fact that's not usually how it turns out.
Most of the time it is not intact. They just aren't. The abdomen is always ripped open. Everything will just get ripped up. You know, whenever we have a smooth portion of liver, we think that's good because most of the time it's like, you know, just the instruments they go in to pull.
They don't have my interests in mind.
Or mine. It really pisses me off.
So I've been screaming about this area being neglected, lacking in oversight, lacking in accountability for, 30 years now.
Dr. Arthur Kaplan is head of medical ethics at the NYU Langone Medical Center.
Until this sting operation happened, nobody even remembered that it was going on. It's just, you normally want to take a look when you're dealing with human remains as to what happens with them and how they're distributed. That's why I think you need the lines that you don't cross. You don't want to be sliding down any slope where you start to say, our goal is to get fetal tissue for research.
A lot of people have become concerned that people have found end runs around the no sale of fetal tissues and body parts aspect of the law. They charge or overcharge for producing the body parts, shipping and handling, managing the body parts, and so forth. This has become selling while pretending not to sell. We should react with horror at what is going on in these clinics. Dismembering the child in the womb, vacuuming out the consequences, and then examining the, quote, specimen, unquote, to see whether there are usable organs or parts that can be, for want of a better word, sold to people who can use them in scientific research.
Perhaps these videos have finally provoked awareness of the fetal trade. In fact, though it's not normally something people like to talk about, it has become part of the national conversation. When we return, the fallout, political and otherwise, of the Planned Parenthood investigation. No sooner had the Center for Medical Progress started to release its videos than they became one of the biggest stories of the year. And in the midst of a presidential race, the candidates spoke out.
The next thing I intend to do is instruct the Department of Justice to open an investigation into these videos and to prosecute Planned Parenthood for any criminal violations.
I defunded Planned Parenthood more than 4 years ago, long before any of these videos came out.
And these were not empty threats. Since the videos came out, Arkansas, Utah, Alabama, Louisiana, and New Hampshire have taken various steps to defund Planned Parenthood. Several states are investigating Planned Parenthood clinics. They include Texas, Florida, Georgia, Arizona, Missouri, Kansas, and Tennessee.
Selling
or buying fetal parts associated with an abortion is entirely illegal.
On a federal level, Senate Republicans tried to bring up a defunding bill, but were blocked by Democrats. Meanwhile, Republican House Speaker John Boehner says he's awaiting the results of several House committee investigations into the controversy.
Now, if you've seen this video, I don't have to tell you how sickening it is. So rest assured, we're going to get to the bottom of this and protect the values that we hold dear.
You can't sell for a profit. Donating for research is one thing, but selling for a profit is another. Manipulating abortions, that's a crime.
Republican Congresswoman Marsha Blackburn is vice chairman of the House Energy and Commerce Committee, one of the investigating bodies.
When you talk about a less crunchy way of performing an abortion or manipulating that abortion to preserve parts, that is something that we want to delve into.
On August 7th, her committee sent letters to Planned Parenthood and to biotech companies requesting information regarding fetal tissue collection. A week later, August 14th, STEM Express terminated its relationship with Planned Parenthood. In a statement, the company said, "While we value our relationship with Planned Parenthood, that work represents a small percentage of our overall business activity, and we must focus our limited resources on resolving these inquiries." On August 27th, they provided to us a further statement. They said STEM Express has not been found to have broken any laws, that the company is cooperating with investigators, and that, quote, approximately 1% of the company's business involves unaltered fetal tissue, and that part of the business operates at a financial loss. While this was happening, there was a counterattack on Daleiden. Many supporters of Planned Parenthood blasted him for deceptive editing in his videos.
An organization that opposes safe and legal abortion used secretly recorded, heavily edited videos to make outrageous claims.
Planned Parenthood then commissioned an outside group to analyze the videos. They concluded that there was so much editing it was impossible to say how much the meaning of the undercover encounters was distorted. In a statement to us, Planned Parenthood called Daleiden and his team extremists who doctored videos to support false claims. Daleiden, for his part, insists that the videos accurately depict what happened and that his raw material will prove it.
That's something that we could easily provide to law enforcement or the media if necessary.
Meanwhile, 2 temporary restraining orders were issued against the Center for Medical Progress, preventing them from releasing certain video. The first came from a Los Angeles Superior Court, protecting STEM Express employees on privacy grounds.
This idea that a court can enjoin free speech on this broad-based scale without evidence, it's called a prior restraint.
Jay Sekulow was a prominent attorney who now represents CMP board member Troy Newman.
Classic prior restraint. It's an intimidation tactic, though.
The other restraining order from a federal court was based on concern for the safety of National Abortion Federation leaders in the video if their identities became known.
There are a couple of legal battles already going on at the time we're talking with regard to these videos. There are probably others coming. How confident are you that you'll be able to move forward and continue to release material with all of these legal battles pending?
The Center for Medical Progress follows all applicable laws in the course of our investigative journalism work, and we also are prepared and we are contesting any attempts to suppress our First Amendment rights to freedom of speech or freedom of the press.
His lawyers advised Daleiden to exercise his Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination in the civil case brought by the National Abortion Federation. Father Frank Pavone says Daleiden and other pro-lifers have a moral right to employ controversial methods.
In a pro-life prison. It's a war. And in any war, you have to employ the tactics of war, which include spying. There's an enemy here. You have to spy, and you have to go in, and you have to go undercover, and you have to get information that ultimately is aimed not at destroying them, but exposing them. Because all we have to do is expose this information to the light of day. Enough of the American people, on seeing this evidence, on seeing the truth, will in fact reject both abortion and the industry that is behind it.
One group that has yet to sue to stop the release of any videos, Planned Parenthood. They've stated they're considering legal action against CMP, but so far haven't taken any.
Why haven't they gotten involved in one of these legal fights? I mean, they would seem to have more than anybody an interest at blocking any more of these videos.
I think that Planned Parenthood and their lawyers do not want to be in a table sitting across from a lawyer asking them real questions about what was really taking place inside those abortion clinics and inside these clinics where they were selling body parts. Because if you're in discovery, you get to ask those questions.
Sekulow believes Dalyden's videos will eventually all be released and that there should be investigations into all facilitators of the fetal tissue trade.
So is it better to be investigating those groups? Have they done anything wrong, or is the focus rightly on Planned Parenthood?
I think it needs to be on Planned Parenthood and the others. I mean, let's think about what we're discussing right now. The harvesting of baby body parts in order to put them into a stream of commerce for research or whatever it might be. Who does this? What civilized culture does this?
On August 21st, an LA judge sided with Dalyden's group, ending the restraining order related to STEM Express. While all this was happening, the Democrats were figuring out how they should respond to the controversy. Hillary Clinton, the party's frontrunner for president, at first called the video disturbing. Planned Parenthood had enlisted the support of a public relations firm run by two powerful longtime Democrats, Hillary Rosen and Anita Dunn. Within a week of her initial comment, Hillary Clinton changed her tune in a professionally produced video.
Republicans like Scott Walker and Jeb Bush are calling to defund Planned Parenthood. When they attack women's health, they attack America's health, and it's wrong, and we're not going to let them get away with it.
That was a pretty quick pivot.
It was, I have to wonder if there were what kind of discussions might have happened behind the scenes.
Some Democrats have even suggested Dalyden and the Center for Medical Progress be prosecuted for creating a fake business and recording people without their consent. They have asked two people to look into it, U.S. Attorney General Loretta Lynch and California Attorney General Kamala Harris. Yes, the same one who was involved in stopping Dalyden's earlier project at Live Action. Neither side was backing down. By late August, Live Action organized protests outside Planned Parenthood clinics. Lila Rose said the videos have energized the pro-life movement.
I have words for Planned Parenthood and their defenders in politics and even in the media. This battle is not only not going away, but this battle is going to be won. Planned Parenthood is going to be defunded. The country's changing, and that change is happening now, and we're going to see it even more in coming months.
It seems likely this issue will play a role in the upcoming election. Does Planned Parenthood not deserve federal funding, or is even asking that question an attack on women? And once you ask that question, it leads to another. What sort of choices do women have beyond Planned Parenthood? A look at that when we return. In the battle over defunding Planned Parenthood, at issue is the very identity and real purpose of the organization itself. Is it an essential provider of women's health care, or a high-volume abortion operation, or both?
For more than a century, Planned Parenthood has provided essential services for women.
But others claim that providing essential health services is not what Planned Parenthood is really about.
We were told that we were to turn every client visit and every telephone call into a revenue-generating visit.
Abby Johnson, who started as a medical assistant and worked her way up to director of Gulf Coast Planned Parenthood in Houston, questions whether the organization has the best interests of its patients at heart.
Well, there's certainly motivation at Planned Parenthood to sell a product.
And that product line is limited.
If a pregnant woman comes into Planned Parenthood, the only thing that we can offer her is an abortion. Because Planned Parenthood phased out their prenatal care program, we don't have any adoption assistance for them. And so literally the only way that we can make money off of a pregnant woman is to sell her an abortion. And selling an abortion to a woman who is feeling very scared and very vulnerable is a pretty easy sell.
With that sale comes a pitch to donate the remains to medical research.
When we would talk to women about donating the tissue during the consent process, almost all of the women said, yeah, sure. I think it soothed their conscience. We needed to be able to sell the woman on this so that she would consent, so that we would be able to get the additional money from the abortion.
Johnson became so disgusted that she quit Planned Parenthood and became a pro-life activist.
Our generation will be the one that ends abortion.
The Daleiden videos remind her of what she left behind.
I don't think that these workers are necessarily cold-hearted. I just think that, like I was, I think that they are blinded to what's right in front of them. I mean, I did that job. I pieced babies back together. I picked out the parts. I mean, how did I not see that? And I don't really have a good answer. It's just this blindness that takes over your mind and your spirit, and you don't see what is so blatantly obvious right in front of you.
Once again, we should note that we repeatedly asked to sit down with Planned Parenthood to discuss the controversy, and they declined to be interviewed. Opponents note that while Planned Parenthood has 700 clinics across the country, there are actually up to 10,000 other clinics available to women, with over 1,200 of them federally supported. One place they can go is Obria, which operates 6 clinics in Southern California. They don't perform abortions, but they offer many other services. I spoke to Claire Venegas, who works in development and expansion at Obria.
We have almost 35 years of experience delivering life-affirming health care.
Is this truly an alternative to Planned Parenthood?
Absolutely. We offer everything from pregnancy tests and ultrasounds to cancer screenings, HIV testing, STD testing and treatment, as well as prenatal care. And we also treat women where they are emotionally. We want to make sure that they feel comforted and understand that we're there as a resource no matter what decision they make.
I would say the majority of the patients that come in have only one option in their mind just because they're scared. A lot of times it's abortion, and so we educate them about all of their options, abortion, parenting, and adoption.
Ruthie Burke is a nurse who works for Obria.
We make sure that before they leave the clinic, they're well aware of each decision, and if they choose that, what they're going to be getting into after that. We don't want them to leave feeling like we pressured them to make a decision.
Christy Polidorus is a former patient who now volunteers at Obria.
As this all was playing out, you mentioned there was a lot of pressure in your life, those who wanted you to have an abortion, and you actually had an appointment at Planned Parenthood.
The father was telling me that I needed to. My ex-boyfriend, who I had been with for 4 years and I was still close to, was telling me what to do. I didn't really have a lot of friends, working and being a single mom. I didn't have a social life. There's been mistakes in my past that I carry with me, and it's a very, very heavy load to carry around for the rest of your life. So I canceled the appointment. I came home and I was still pregnant, and I told everybody, I'm having this baby. Leave me alone, be in my life or don't be in my life. This is what I'm doing.
Some of Obria's patients have already been to Planned Parenthood, like Danielle Stoneberger, who went there as a single, pregnant 19-year-old.
So at the point that you sought out Planned Parenthood, you were 11 weeks into your pregnancy. When you got there, what were you met with? What kind of options were you given?
I was just simply asked if I had already made my decision or not. And when I said yes, they left it at that. I asked if I could have an ultrasound, and they said no. That's pretty much it. It was very cut and dry.
Danielle got pregnant again, but this time she went to Obria.
How did you end up at Obria?
I wanted to go a different route, and I looked up clinics in my area. They counseled me in all 3 different options that a woman has. They really changed my life because I didn't have a support system.
This time she had the baby, Ethan, who is now 2.5.
That's a great sacrifice for a young woman.
It is, but it isn't. There's going to be sacrifices, but then there are also huge blessings with it. Like, I haven't given up any of my goals. I work full-time, I go to school, and I still make time for him and my family and friends. I lead a very well-balanced life, and I'm happy. I wouldn't do anything differently because it led to my son, and I really straightened out everything for myself.
The story we've shown in the last hour isn't going away. It's already become an issue in the presidential election. But the bigger point is what it might say about us. We live in a nation where abortion is legal and safe, but not rare. In the 4 decades since Roe v. Wade, perhaps abortion has become so commonplace that most Americans don't give it much thought. If the activists behind these videos have accomplished anything, it might be that they've given us all something to think about. That's our show. Thanks for watching. Good night.